So I'm sure now that it's pretty good? Okay. So I'm sure now that you guys are almost reaching the end of your first quarter here, you realize the importance of literature reviews. They really are just such a salient part of research, as well as practice. So whenever you, for example, want to run a study, you need to know what research is currently out there, what is understood on this subject, how are you contributing to something new, whether it's methodology or different population or really just something that has yet to be done. And so literature reviews allow you to kind of back up your claim that what you're doing for research is actually important and you are adding to the breadth of literature. Similarly, in practice, so for people who are more practice-oriented and want to actually go out and implement interventions, it's also very important to do literature reviews because that allows you to know like what currently exists, what evidence is there that one method works versus maybe one is less efficient. And so as you'll see throughout your classes, you'll be assigned quite a few literature reviews, as well as maybe potential GSR positions or internships where, you know, your mentor or advisor may ask you to actually run a literature review, create one for them based on a certain topic. And so I'm here today just to kind of go through the steps and making your lives a little bit easier because it can be quite overwhelming. It's a lot of work to do a literature review. And so there are some kind of easy steps to follow that just really make the process that much more easy to do. So first starting off, you have to do your literature search. So a literature search can be done in a variety of engines, but it's important to be very aware and record like all of your steps in doing that. So for example, like if you're more interested in like biomedical literature, you may want to use PubMed. I personally like to use Google Scholar because there's so many different features that you can do to actually narrow down your search. So you would first choose that search engine and then identify important search terms. So there's many different ways you can look for a topic. So for example, if you want to if you wanted to examine advertising towards children about healthy eating and like what is out there, what exists in the literature, what do we know, what has been done. How might one actually go ahead and look that up? There's a bunch of different ways, there's different terms, and so using those search engines to your advantage by creating very specific search terms and recording which ones you do to make sure that you're very comprehensive in how you're actually looking for that topic, using Boolean operators. So I'm sure you guys are mostly aware, you can use like and or not in like capitals in between search terms in order to specify more so what you want to examine. And in addition, you can choose the side panel and choose the number of the years you're interested, the location if you're only interested in like US studies versus international, and a bunch of other things that you can specify to make sure you're actually looking at the targeted sample of literature that's out there. So once you've reached that step and you start going and searching for the different articles that are out there, you should be able to kind of like vet what's related to your topic by first reading the title and then the abstract and then skimming the results. So it's not possible if you're doing a real literature review to read every single article. It's too time consuming. Most of the articles are not going to be relevant to what you're actually looking for. And so between the abstract and title, you'll get a good idea. And if you feel like, oh, there's maybe something relevant here, I do recommend maybe skimming the results, discussion. And then once you actually find something, okay, this is something I think is related to my topic, a background article, then I suggest actually using a format where you start basically categorizing the different elements of that article in a table. So as you can see on the second page that I've laid out for you guys, here's an example of a table that one might use for literature use. So in the two following pages, I actually have printed like the first page of those two articles. They're two recent articles that were published in American Journal of Public Health. And so here, what you essentially do would be create a table where you have your citation, and then you have, different categories where you can easily sum up the articles that you found and have like deemed worthy of like including in your literature review. So we have, for example, study, sample and size, data collection, key measures. So you might want to look at independent versus dependent variables, data analysis, so maybe some of the tests that had been used, and then sort of findings, kind of some of the highlighted findings, what's important, what do you get out of the study in a few short bullet points. And then finally, in terms of critiquing whether this is a good article to actually be using in your literature review, you may want to highlight some of the strengths and weaknesses. So in addition to creating one of these tables, a way that can help you then create your literature review is by categorizing different themes throughout the different articles that you've identified. So unfortunately, these were printed in black and white, and so you can't quite see, but I did create a legend at the bottom where it says cohort study, large sample, small sample. These are just examples of ways you may want to categorize the different articles in terms of their quality, a larger sample size generally being, better than small, more generalizable to a larger group. The different types of studies, whether it's a cohort, whether it's a case control, as I'm sure you've learned in some of your intro classes, not all types of studies are equal. There are some that have that deal with issues of validity. And so by doing that, you would be able to essentially have like a large grid with each row describing that specific article, and then throughout having different color schemes that would allow you to actually see which themes are coming about. So in terms of actually writing the literature review, it really depends on, I guess, what you're writing it for. So for a class, you might have an assignment, or professionally as well, where your job is to do a comprehensive literature review. In that event, you'd really want to make sure that you're finding everything that's out there that's relevant to what you want to talk about, and then using this color scheme, identify those themes and discuss them in a way like through sections with the themes. So you may have like a heading that's related to, in my example I gave earlier, like advertisements towards healthy eating for children. You may want to talk about one that was television advertisements, and so studies that examine or evaluate TV interventions. And so under that heading, you would go ahead and start discussing the different studies that are out there, the similarities, the differences, but you'd be able to identify those easily using that color scheme. In addition, if you wanted to, an important thing to do, if you're trying to find information on something that there isn't a lot of research available, it may also be beneficial to create a similar type of table for the articles that you discarded due to just like they're not high quality studies. So this is a really small sample size in a really small area. It wasn't randomized. All these different things that may come up as being like, well, I don't know if this is exactly the type of study I'd want to compare when creating my literature review to the type of research I want to do. But in itself, by creating that second table, you're able to make a stronger claim that like what you're doing is different. You're improving the methodology of what has been done before. And so it's good to have both a table of the articles you want to discuss as well as ones you don't, because it really helps you kind of build this platform for the type of research you want to do. So I'm speaking from a point of view with someone who would do like a literature review for an actual like manuscript. So I described earlier, sometimes the only assignment is to do the literature review itself. Other times it's really to inform the research that you are doing to understand what's out there. So in that event, it's very important to like know what's out there, whether it's good or bad, and to be able to base that current literature off of the discussion you want to create. Like, this is what we know, this is how it's been done, what hasn't been done, why hasn't this population been examined, and then kind of frame your paper as being this kind of novel topic based on what you know already is out there, and show how you're actually contributing to that literature. And so really, I can stand here and talk all day, but the best way to actually learn how to do a literature review is to actually do it yourself. And it's quite a time-consuming process, but I have prepared like a little exercise for you guys here, so you can get the idea. So if you go over to the blank grid that I've created, it's using that same format that I had presented earlier with the different columns listing the different elements of the paper. And so following this grid, I've actually included a research article that was published this past year in American Journal of Public Health. So I wanted to spend the next 10 minutes skimming through this article, reading the abstract and the results and maybe some of the methods, and start taking some bullet points based off of that, the information you find in this article, and filling it into the grid over here. So I'll give you guys about 10 minutes, and then we'll share some of the different topics that we've written down. Okay, so I'd like everyone to turn to that first page of the BMI article. So I just wanted to bring to your attention that this article, as well as most that have, like a research format, started out with a literature review. So the way this was done, there actually were subheadings in ways that kind of talked about the different literature that exists. So for example, the first one is neighborhoods and pre-adolescent obesity. So in a nice prose-like fashion, they're basically able to identify the general findings of many studies that exist out there looking at neighborhoods and its relationship with pre-adolescent obesity. So they use such terms as, most studies among pre-adolescent children have focused on X, Y, and Z, and they provide, the different references, and they talk about how others look at different ages for younger children that have found proximity to convenience stores and fast food outlets is associated with higher body weight, and then other different findings under this general heading. So in that grid that I showed you guys earlier, something like this might come up once you create a very organized way to present your different articles you're including. You're able to identify these large overarching themes that relate maybe some of the articles and the different research that they're presenting. So similarly in this following heading, it's schools and pre-adolescent obesity. So looking less at neighborhood, but actual the school environment. Then neighborhoods versus school and pre-adolescent obesity. So actually comparing the neighborhood and the school and their relationship to pre-adolescent obesity. And finally, that sets the article up for current investigation. So what are they doing? How is it different? How does it contribute to what is already known in this topic, etc.? So I was hoping to actually go through maybe some of the results that you guys had for the article you read. So in terms of study sample and size, what can you guys tell me about the BMI article?
There were 811 pre-adolescent students in the urban community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and something like that is perfect. Like you don't need to go in so much detail, but enough that when you're looking at it quickly on a grid that what's your sample size? It's fairly large. Generally, what are you looking at? You don't need to say, Connecticut, urban environment, or suburban, I guess, Connecticut, suffices for your purpose of doing this literature review. And how about data collection? What can you guys tell me about the study design?
It was longitudinal.
Mm-hmm. And what about the comparison group? Do you have any?
Well, I didn't know if it was longitudinal. I think they said that their data came from a longitudinal study, but their specific things that they were analyzing wasn't. They weren't going necessarily longitudinal. Mm-hmm. But it was a cross-sectional cohort study for the specific one.
Yeah, my understanding when I read through it that it was a longitudinal study using that data that had been collected over time.
Data from a longitudinal.
Right, so is that a one-time point? Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I missed that. And then what about key measures? So what are some of the independent as well as the dependent variables? Mm-hmm. So BMI is dependent. And what are some of the variables they're interested in looking at that influence BMI?
school and neighborhood SES,
Mm-hmm.
the school connectedness and neighborhood social ties.
Mm-hmm.
Fruit and vegetable intake, reflection.
So yeah, those are easy things to just put in bullet points so you know exactly, the measures that are being looked at in this study. So that's important. If you're interested in maybe looking at one of those measures or something that's not covered, this would be a very useful article to include in your literature review. So in terms of data analysis, what can you tell me about some of the statistical tests that they ran? Yeah, it's pretty advanced. Even for me, like I can't say that I know to do a cross-classified random effects hierarchical linear models yet, but it's a sophisticated study design. So you could at least gauge from that this is a high-quality study that is not just simply looking at a t-test difference in average BMIs. They're actually going ahead and trying to create predictive models. And so what are some of the key findings?
So there was a significant association between school connectedness and BMI percentile. So as school connectedness increased, BMI percentile went down.
Mm-hmm. So that's good to know. That's a positive correlation between connectedness and I guess weight loss. That's important. Anything else that was interesting that you guys found?
The association was stronger in more affluent neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So maybe some sort of, interaction effect going on. It's not just neighborhood, but baseline neighborhood affluence is influencing that relationship. And then based off of, for example, the statistical design and the study design and the size, what are some strengths and weaknesses within this article?
It's kind of a small sample size.
Mm-hmm.
The author noted that they were not able to get neighborhood SES factors. Family SES, yeah. Neighborhood SES factors.
Mm-hmm.
As a limitation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to go to the limitation section. Here they even have limitations and strengths, so it's clearly laid out for you what makes this study strong, what are some of the limitations, and...
I have a question.
Sure.
This is for the results. I'm looking at the figure number 1.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at the figure, we see for those neighborhoods with low affluence, the effect of school connectedness is none. There's a straight line in the figure. So we are here to investigate and plan intervention to reduce disparities.
Yes.
But actually, what we are looking at here, these kind of interventions to increase connectedness to schools will not help to people living in low-income neighborhoods. So if we create an intervention for thinking in school connectedness, we actually will benefit people that live in high affluence neighborhoods, right? So I think that's a very important result in that table that we should consider.
Definitely. I mean, I think sometimes when you do these research studies, you find, that it's the more affluent or advantaged group often does benefit the most. And as a result, if you're going to implement this type of intervention, you would be contributing to disparities. This may also spark other research as why is it at the low affluent level neighborhood that there is no effect? And it may, because of this research, actually have a different research question that you're interested in looking at. So yeah, I would agree here, this is not good justification, the specific study for running this type of intervention among that environment. Which is why research itself is so important. You need to know what's out there because, this study may say this, another study may say something else, and it's, you have to be an active reader. You need to identify the strengths and weaknesses in those studies and really kind of get an overall picture of what's working, what's not working, and what are maybe some underlying causes for those differences.
Will every article have limitations in the strengths section?
I think most articles talk about their limitations. They're not always so obvious under like a subheading, for example.
Sorry, the only reason why I asked is because if you have a box that says strengths and weaknesses, so if it's not explicitly stated, is that something that like, oh, well, I'm going to say that the strength is this and the weakness is this, or is it, how do you define that?
So that's something you'll probably learn in maybe some of your methods courses. So like in EPI, for example, you learn a lot about different study designs, you learn about validity, reliability, these different things that make a study stronger versus weaker. So with the more that you do, you'll actually kind of quickly be able to identify, sometimes by even looking at the abstract, whether this is a high quality study or not. Limitations, are not, there's so many limitations to a study, they can only list so many, and some are not even as clear cut in a defined section. There may be throughout the discussion, but I think like as you progress in your degree, you'll definitely be able to identify those weaknesses. I'm sure at least in one of your classes you'll be doing an article critique, which is something where it's like a learning process to really be able to attest whether something is high quality or not, and where it can improve. So I was wondering if anyone had any questions for me. I mean, this is kind of the type of thing you would do, and then for many articles, starting with that search process that I first described, always keeping track also of your search terms and how you're doing. If you're doing a comprehensive literature review, you shouldn't keep changing your search terms, because then you may not know whether or not you found something. So if you are constant, you're like, okay, I'm going to look for BMI, school, environment. You may use some like Boolean operators with like plus in between, and or put things in quotation, and it'll allow you to actually go through every single page if you want to limit to a certain time frame, and at least throughout that search engine that you've looked through everything that you think could potentially be relevant. So that is important. And then once you've identified those, what you think are relevant articles, after you've read the title, the abstract, skim through maybe some of the results and discussion, you're able to basically go through the process for all of those articles that we've done here today.
I just had a question about like resources that libraries might have in terms of like workshops that they might have to help you narrow your search. Because in my undergrad, I used a lot of like sources from PsycInfo.
Okay.
But I'm thinking specifically for public health, like are there specific kind of databases just for public health? Web of Science? Web of Science.
Yeah, Web of Science. I attended a workshop at the biomedical library. I think if you ask, maybe go to the front desk and ask the librarian. She was so excited to like provide this workshop for us, and she really was very helpful in navigating the system here that we have.
Okay.
Yeah,
we have our own librarian.
The author, she'll like help you figure out all the search terms and everything. It's really helpful. Awesome.
I mean, related to that, I grew up with the era where we didn't have all this wonderful digital stuff, and so we had to actually look at other people's literature reviews and go through and then figure out which of these articles is cited more times. Now you can do that digitally. You can figure out who the high citation articles are, and you definitely want to think about that and where the higher impact journals are, because those are going to be the better references or better citations. And so that's also something you can learn how to do.
And then actually, that reminds me, if you're looking for like a research topic and you're having trouble finding anything with different search term combinations, you should look at the references cited in like good articles that you found, because some of them might be a little bit older and so maybe not as relevant, but like depending on, maybe you're not interested in brand new articles, you're interested in like what has been done, the past 10, 15 years, that'll be just a great resource. And with the digital age, you can more or less just click on the citation and it'll bring you to that next article.
Where are the impact factors located on them? Is it on Google, or is it like when you search it up?
You can directly search it like, American Journal of Public Health impact factor, and it'll come up on their website. I'm not sure if Web of Science, does it have like tells you how many times it's cited a specific article.
We have an impact factor for the journals. I don't know, again, it changes all the time, but that would be, again, then there's a number of times the article is cited. And then there's like the Social Science Citation Index. I'm not sure if Web of Science has that, but
Yeah, I use Google Scholar mostly, and it definitely tells you how many times it's been cited on like the search page. So like under each like article heading. Impact factor you may have to search for. In public health, they're not that high in general. So it's like I think AJPH is like 5.
So is it not really as common to like use those as like a point of determining whether or not it's a good source? And stuff like that?
I mean, it might if it's not a very good journal. Like if it's really, really low and it's like you're questioning like, what is this journal? I've never heard of it before. These results seem kind of out of place. That might lead you to actually go and check. But the number of citations itself should be like easy enough to vet through whether it's good. If there's hundreds of other people who are also citing this article, you can kind of give it the benefit of the doubt that it's probably from a more respected journal, from a more respected scholar.
Okay, I have a silly technical question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you easily pull out citations? Like on Google Scholar? I mean, is there something?
Yeah, if you press Cite on Google Scholar, it'll give you MLA, I think APA, and then one other type of citation. But then there's also like different programs that really help you organize your bibliographies.
Use those like EndNote?
I've used EndNote once. I've been using RefMe more recently because it's free. EndNote, I think they have through the school.
Yeah, so Terra's free also, and that one is just like a plugin that you download, and it's really easy to use.
EndNote has a free web version.
There's a free web version of EndNote too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been trying that, and it takes a while to get used to.
Mhm. But it is great, especially if you are using like AMA formatting, like this article does. If you're trying to organize your bibliography and everything's numbered, it'll drive you crazy if you start like cutting and pasting and moving your stuff around, and you have to like keep track of like all of your references. So it's quite useful for that.
I noticed it only interfaces like with Microsoft Word though, right? Like if you wanted to use it for a Google Doc, it's not gonna.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So if you're not using one of those programs and you're just doing it on Microsoft Word, this is a technical question, and you are having to do an AMA style, is there like a function that allows you to create a reference page where the numbers are connected to the sub or superscript? Thank you.
I think there is. I've never personally used
I know
it.
you can do it with footers
Okay.
and with endnotes. However, like create a separate reference page. I don't know. I just did it manually because I didn't know how to.
But that's what's so time consuming.
Yeah.
You just really don't want to wait. I mean, that's the great thing about the digital advantages. But you have to know how to use them. Because then you have to like go, okay, I've got to leave 3 hours to decide, that I'm not really writing because I've got to make sure my reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a steep learning curve. I agree. It's not so intuitive the first time using it, but you're going to have to use it over and over again. You're going to always have to have references, citations, and it's definitely worth your while to like learn how to use one of those user-friendly programs once you get the swing of things. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. I also have my contact information on the handouts, so if any of you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to email.